recording.
Hi,
Turn it this way. Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to Surviving Adulthood. I'm Andy, and as you guys can all see, I am driving right now. But I had to make sure I hopped on right now because we have a special guest. Her name is Tiffany. Everyone knows her as Special, but we are here doing our behind the scenes of the music industry and wanted to make sure that we have a time to dive in to hear all of the things that happen behind the scenes in the music industry. And Tiffany, how you been? I'm sorry, I'm driving right now.
No, don't apologize. I salute the multitask, man. It's beautiful.
Yes. I'm a mute.
So yes, welcome. So like Andrea said, how have you been?
I'm good. The world is a different place right now, so just dealing with that really. But overall, just good. Trying to stay productive, trying to make stuff. How are you guys?
Good. I mean, good as one could be. You know, I'm so quick to say I'm good, I'm great.
Right.
When that's not always necessarily true. I'm feeling a bunch of things, but as of this current moment that I'm with you all, I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Same
What's up,
here.
Andrew?
I think we can say we tend to say like first thing that comes to mind, like I'm great, but I mean I'm surviving. I'm surviving adult. That's pretty much how I am. It's so nice to see you. We haven't seen you since, if you guys did not know, Tiffany does she does groups for podcasts. She does a bunch of things, but she also hosts groups for podcasts that are at different stages, different levels, but it's a great resource for podcasts in the local areas so that they can stay connected and continue to work together. With that being said, can we dive into kind of like what you do? You're kind of like your elevator speech. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you guys for coming to Pod Recognize Pod. I'm excited to have you guys back in the future.
Yeah.
So I basically just do podcasting right now. I did radio for 10 years. I had wanted to do radio since I was 10 years old. So I went to San Francisco State and studied broadcasting, did college radio, absolutely loved it. Then worked in radio for 10 years, iHeart, Sirius, all that stuff. And then within the past year and a half, 2 years, I got out of radio, got a quote unquote regular job, and just really focused on podcasting. I know that podcasting is what I want to do. I love the long form. I love sitting down with people. I love having conversations. And then Pod Recognize Pod is what John, Jordan, and I kind of made to get podcasters to sit down together and have conversations, because podcasting is such a solitary medium that we don't have conversations about it. We don't really interact. And there's so many different resources right now because podcasting is blowing up. So it's like we need to sit down and be able to share resources and just really help each other. So that's pretty much what I do.
That's
So,
awesome.
Also too, so like Andrea mentioned that some people may know you as Special. So can you tell us how did that name come about?
I always wish that I had like a cool story about it, but I really don't. I think I was maybe 13, 14 years old, and I'm like, oh, okay, if I do radio, I want to be on air, but I also want to DJ, so I need a DJ name. And it was like, okay, the two that came up for me were DJ Cream Soda and DJ Special. I really liked Cream Soda, and special was just like a cool word to me. You know, there was like that phrase, like my mom says I'm special. Right. So I just kind of ran with it. And it's funny too, because it's had like multiple iterations. So like back when I used to DJ, it was DJ Special. And then when I started out college radio, it was Miss Special. And then I finally dropped it down to Special. So I can always kind of tell how long I've known someone by what they call me. Like if they call me Miss Special or DJ Special, I'm like, whoa, how long have we known each other? Because this is crazy. And it also just became a thing of like, changing the connotation of the word. Like with special, that was really kind of associated with weird or even, you know, different developmental disabilities and things like that. And it's like, no, special is something that's exciting and different and out of the norm in a good way too. So I just kind of wanted to play with the word a little bit, I guess.
Well, I like it. It is different. I mean, and also too, yeah, DJ special, like that's dope though. Yeah. So it's not bad at all. I want to dive in into talk more about your podcast and the type of music guests that you have on there, and how do you pick them, and and how did that even come about?
When I did college radio, I had always just wanted to talk to people. Like I would listen to music projects and I would have so many questions. And I also just super respect the process. Like making a body of work, like a whole album, a whole mixtape, EP, whatever, there's so much that goes into that, from the engineers to the producers to the actual artists themselves, and just the different storytelling. There's so much that goes into it. So I always had so many questions. So within college radio, I was able to bring people into the San Francisco State studio and really have those conversations. And then once I was out of college, I'm like, oh no, I want to keep doing this. Like, this is what fuels me. So then that's when podcasting was becoming a little more well-known and easier to do. So I was like, okay, I'll turn it into a podcast. So yeah, it's really just sitting down with artists and having conversations about what it was like making that project. Every single song, we talk about every single track, and like the cover art, there's always a process making the cover. There's always a process giving it a title, and just all these things that are so fascinating to me. But it's also interesting too, because those conversations lead to conversations about life and being a human and you know what I mean? Just all these different things that go into life. So it becomes, like, for me at least, a very like therapeutic thing to hear people go through their process, not only artistically, but in life. So it's crazy how much it's kind of helped me as a person in a way I couldn't have imagined. So.
I mean,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I applaud you for that, but because, like, for those that are listening and that can't see the artistic background you have in the background, as soon as you came on, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. Yes. For those that don't know, you are part of our Behind the Music series. So we really, really chose and kind of zoned in on you because we thought it was cool that you just kind of jumped in, took that leap of faith, and was like, I like musicians. I know what I'm doing. I want to, it's not even exploit. I want to share their stories. I want to learn. I saw the one that you did on like SZA, and like you have some like legendary people just like that you talk to, and I was like, what in the world do we know about this?
Right.
Like jumping in and just no holds barred, let me just talk to you. And they were like really effective interviews, like they're still relevant today. So I encourage all of our listeners to definitely go back and take a look. But with that being said, do you get nerves? Like, what were kind of some of the roadblocks?
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. I mean, honestly, like, my content has kind of evolved. So I think evolving in itself is kind of an interesting roadblock, trying to figure out, okay, what exactly do I want to do? Of course, a lot of the bigger name artists, I can't act like I got those myself. At a time, I did have an @iHeartMedia email address, so I'm sure that helped kind of land things. But yeah, it's just really about kind of shooting that shot and really putting that email out there, making sure that it's as concise as it can be, kind of learning what, you know, managers or whoever their people's teams are is looking for in an email, giving them bam, 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 this is what it looks like, this is how long it's going to take, this is an idea of what I want to talk about, and just making it as easy as possible for them. And yeah, I mean, as far, you said, do I get nervous? Was that the question?
Nervous and roadblocks.
Yeah. As far as nervous, it really depends on the situation. Sometimes you'll walk into like a green room backstage and there's just a group of people in there and you're like, okay, how am I going to have a conversation with this one person and silence the room and keep everybody kind of honed in on this situation? There's that. But at the end of the day, like, because these are conversations about the music and they're conversations about, you know, like I said, it leads to conversations about the human experience. You kind of just view people as human beings, and you're sitting down with a human, and I think it's more excited than anything. I think that when it comes to like nervous and energies like that, it's more of an excitement than anything. It's not so much like, oh my God, I'm so scared. It's like, oh, I'm so excited to do this. Like, this is such a cool opportunity. So stuff like that. I guess roadblocks, you kind of become your own roadblock. Like, you know,
that's real.
You second guess things. You wonder if what you're doing makes sense. You wonder if, you know, taking time, I'm going to repeat that. You second guess yourself. You wonder if what you're doing, you know, makes sense, or am I taking too long to release it? And, you know, just all these things. So there's been a lot of like personal mental roadblocks, but just about keeping going. You just got to keep going. I tell people all the time, like, it doesn't matter if you stop and start or whatever, just keep going.
Just keep going. And that's what I see about that. I didn't hear you, Andrea. What'd you say?
No, I said that's very true. Just with us doing our thing, and like, you just gotta keep going.
Turn your camera.
I know you gonna get me. I'm gonna get better.
No, you're fine.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, because you can be your worst, biggest enemy. And so, but you have to just keep it going regardless. And that's something that the three of us, we have to continue to tell ourselves, because we have various projects together and outside of one another, and, you know, with life, and, you know, it's like, oh, you just got to pick it up. But I mean, definitely you are an inspiration within itself, really. Because when you go to even to your Instagram, you see, like Angelisa said, all the podcasts that you've done with the various artists, and like she said, some of them are very well known, and I think really all of them are well known to a certain degree to their prospective audiences. And so that's something to be like clapped about and acknowledged within itself. With all of that, but who's been like maybe your top 3 favorite people that you've interviewed?
Oh, she's going for the jugular.
Yeah, I'm like, goodness.
And why? Or just some ones that have just stood out the most? Like, I'm sure all of them have been valuable.
Yeah.
But what are some of the ones that were like, you know what, when they said this stuck out to me. This means so much to me.
It's nuts. Trying to go off the top of my head. And it's usually the people who are really able to kind of break down that wall and really, you know, kind of bare their soul in a sense, and really just take me to places that I never even thought throughout the conversation we would go.
Right.
I think off the top of my head, Monty Draper, he's from out here in the Bay Area. Every time we sit down, it's like a 2-hour conversation, and it's just everything. And, you know, on top of that, he's just a great person in general, a great artist. So to have those conversations with him is always great. Sylvan LeCue is an artist he used to go by Quest, and he's had a bunch of projects. He's from Florida. Sitting down with him has always been a really good time, because same thing, like it comes down to understanding. You know, you're gonna sit down with people who don't completely get what you do, and, you know, they're still willing to sit down, and that's great. But there's people who just stick out, who get it, and are excited to have the conversations and want to have the conversations. Right. So he's definitely one of those people. Last one, trying to think of, like,
you can round us off with 5.
No. But here's the interesting thing is, like, I tell people too, like, sometimes you kind of do things and you don't really revisit them, and you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm trying to even think, I'm like, who have I even had on?
Go. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a forward motion. So I'm like, oh man. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Fat Joe is really cool. because Fat Joe is, you know what I mean? Like Fat Joe was one of the people where I took a picture with him and sent it to my dad, and my dad was like, oh snap. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't always get that reaction from, you know, my 50 something year old big old white man dad, you know? So I was like, oh, Fat Joe. But even him, like he was able, like he's such a good storyteller. So for him to like,
I love watching his interviews.
Yes. So for him to like trust me with those stories, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, and the whole time too, he was like doing like graffiti like on a piece of paper. So like I have a, like, I forget exactly what he wrote. I think he just wrote Fat Joe, but I have a piece of paper where like he tagged Fat Joe, and I'm just like, he was like, oh, here. And I was like, wait, what? So I think that would rattle off the top 3. If I think of more while we're talking, I'll let you know, but those are the ones off the top of my head.
Yeah, I just was like, man, this is so good. Yeah, and you're right, he is a good storyteller. And so like, how have you reached out? Like, is the process hard to reach out to the artists?
It's not hard. It just takes a little bit of like, when I send it, I really am like, okay, I might get a response, I might not. And I have to kind of be open to that and be like, oh, okay, I'm putting it out there. If it comes back with an interview, cool. If it doesn't, so be it. So I think, you know, like I said, I try to make it as easy as possible and really, you know, give them the bullet points and give them as much information as possible. So yeah, it really depends on the person. It really depends on their team. Like there's so many people that, you know, sometimes their team pushes back and they're like, oh, well, we need your numbers and we need this and we need that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and so it just really depends on people's teams. Sometimes, you know, people don't even have teams and you're dealing with them directly, which sometimes makes it easier, sometimes makes it difficult. It just really depends on what it is. So yeah, I've tried to streamline it as much as possible and make it like, you know, easy for them and easy for me. But yeah, it can go either way. And, you know, there's people who I've had on who I reach out to again and I hear nothing. And I'm just like, man, like you can't help but get sad about that. But you kind of have to keep it moving and be like, well, maybe next time again, because you never really know what people are doing. Like a big part of what I would do is when people were coming into town for a show, I'd kind of center it around then, like, oh, okay, we can, you know, do an interview while you're in town, but you never know what people are doing out here. Like it's the Bay Area. So you got people going to PlayStation, you got people going to Twitter, like people are all over the place, but there's also people who come into town and are just kind of sitting around in their hotel room before the show starts. So you really don't know.
You never know what's going on. And so I wanted to, you know, just talk more also, what is your take on the music industry, especially since you've been in radio for so long and that transition into deciding to do podcasts. So what's your point of view in regards to music then, from when you were heavily in radio and to now?
I think the industry as a whole, like I really kind of side with the independent artists. I think that for the most part, for a lot of people, independent is the best way to go. The industry is, you know, I mean, I tell people all the time, like A Tribe Called Quest said it like 20 years ago, like the music industry is shady, and that's just, it hasn't really changed. I see conversations popping up all the time on Twitter about, you know, people and their deals and what those look like and just how they can be so bad, and it sucks and it's really devastating. So yeah, I lean just more towards, you know, encouraging people to go independent, you know, making sure that independent people's voices are heard, because I think, you know, of course podcasting is getting bigger, but I kind of compare the two to where podcasting is very independent and it is people's expression, and it's an easy way for people to get their stuff out there. And I think that that's such an important part, because the more you involve different, you know, people and start building it up, it does get a little more complicated, and a lot of people don't want to admit that. But having something independent that you're able to put out without, you know, going through all these different channels really makes a difference, and it really helps expression. So yeah, I think that that's what's changed for me from radio till now, is it's like I'm way more interested in what independent people are doing. And I always have a little bit, like, you know, the whole underground scene, and I did a lot of that in like college radio. So that's always kind of spoke to me. But yeah, and I just feel like, not that different journeys are different, but with independent artists, they're just way more involved in every single part of the process.
Right.
So the storytelling is that much more different, and it's just such a love of creating in every single part of it. So it's just really great storytelling. So
I like that.
I do too. So part of what we wanted to kind of like talk to you about was your aha moment, and how you kind of said, this is what I want to do, and this is a legacy that I want to leave behind. So what was that aha moment for you?
That's powerful. I guess honestly it would be, it's cliche because it's a big part of my story now, but I think a big part of it was just actually leaving radio. And it's like, okay, I'm leaving radio. Does this mean that I just go live that quote unquote normal life and don't create stuff anymore? Or do I go out of my way to still create things and still talk to people and still have these conversations? So yeah, as much as I don't think of it that way, I think it definitely was the aha moment, and it kind of helped me figure out what my legacy is. A big word. I'm like, ooh, I don't use that word often, so I appreciate that. But it kind of helped solidify that, and it also just helped me figure out what I want to do as far as the podcast. I don't talk about it too much because I know my ideas as a podcaster are very different than everybody else's. I'm not into monetization. I'm really not into, like, you know, going for a huge audience, and I'm really just doing it as a hobby to have conversations and to put things on record and to
For the
let
culture.
people express themselves. Yeah, very much so. And so I think not only leaving radio and saying I still want to do podcasting, but then having those conversations with myself to say, okay, well, what actually is this podcast, and what does podcasting mean to me, and kind of coming up with those ideas that, like I said, aren't very common in podcasting. And I appreciate anybody who wants to make it just to make it, or, you know, to be big and make money. Like, everything is super respectable in this space, but I had to have those conversations with myself.
That's real. That's real. I think that that's a very important conversation to have, because like you said, I think when we don't have people doing it for the culture, that's when we lose a lot of the culture, because we're trying to make money. We're not doing it from the heart. So I'm very glad that you made that point, because there is definitely a space and a need for people that are specifically just trying to keep it pushing. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Do you have any advice for either podcasters or somebody that is interested in getting in the music industry, whether it be a DJ or whatever?
As far as podcasting, I think it really, you know, there's so many podcasts out right now, which is an interesting statement, but it's really not as many. I mean, it's a lot, but it's moving kind of at, there's a statistic that I'll find, but basically it's moving quickly, but there's still room to get in. There's still a need for everybody's voice. There's still an expression. There's still a way that you can be creative. And I think it really comes down to, you know, having those conversations with yourself. Okay, what do I want to do? But also being comfortable with yourself and letting it evolve. Okay, I started out doing a podcast about this. Now, actually, I think I want to talk about this, and having the energy and the space with yourself to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to evolve, and that's okay. Because sometimes, like you said, we really beat ourselves up. As far as the music industry, DJing, a lot of that is really knowing people. You know, they say it's not what you know, but who you know. But especially in the music industry, that's a huge thing. So just getting to know people, but I always tell people it's really from a human aspect. Yeah, these people are DJs or they're journalists or they're on the radio, whatever. At the end of the day, they're a human being. And the things that they create, they want to be supported too. And they want to be talked to as a human being. So just shooting a link in their bio or just being like, hey, how do I DJ? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
You have to come to them very specifically, come to them in a way where you're talking to an actual human being. Hey, how are you? What's new? Oh, I listened to this that you released. I enjoyed this part of it. You know what I mean? Like really
Right.
creating an actual relationship with a person. And people are different. People are busy. You're not always going to get the intended response, but at least if you come to it from a human point, you're more likely to get a response. And I also think about, where was I going to go with that? I had something else. Think about coming from knowing people. Now I don't remember what I was going to say.
Hey, that happened.
I was like, I was on a roll and then I lost it. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Also asking super specific questions.
Yeah.
You might not always get a response from that. Like I said, everything is hit or miss, but really, not saying, hey, how do I DJ? Being like, hey, I was looking at this controller. Do you like this controller compared to this one? Or, you know what I mean? Like people would come to me and be like, oh, how do I get on with this person? I'm like, I don't know how you get on with them. And then I've had people who would be like, hey, I know that this DJ does, Music Mondays or whatever. Can you facilitate a conversation with us? Or, you know what I mean? Just
Right.
it depends on what you're doing and what it looks like, but asking very solid, specific questions just really makes a difference for people. And it's like, oh yeah, we're willing to help because we know exactly what you want out of this. So yeah, it's way easier.
It's easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier to connect the dots.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I like how you said that about evolving in regards to podcasts, because even with us, like our season 1 is totally different from season 2. And of course, we're only in season 2, and will be this here is season 3, and so you're part of our season 3. So I just love that when I hear people say that, I feel like, okay, we're not far off. You know what I mean? And so that's good to know. I have a question for you though, in regards to the record companies and like working with the ARS. Like I said, this is part of our season 3 and kicking it off in regards to Behind the Music. We interviewed someone last week, and I asked about the ARS, like, are the ARS missing? And so that person response was saying like, oh, they're still around. Things have changed some, but they're still around. But I feel like they're not around because I feel like the development of the artists, they're not there. So what is your take on that, especially since you've interviewed so many artists and you've seen some things over the years? What's your take on that?
I can't say that they're not there because I wasn't in the actual, in their meetings and what they were doing. But like you said, it has completely changed, and you can tell that it's changed. You know what I mean? You see artists like, Post Malone, who basically blew up on SoundCloud, and then and there's so many people like him who, okay, they had this huge song on SoundCloud, now they're on a label, and now what? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what do they do now? And so you can tell that it's completely changed. Bless you. You can tell that it's completely changed because especially that word development that you used. You can tell that there are a lot of people that aren't getting developed the way they used to. There's not a lot of, PR training and whatever you want to call it. It's just not the same. And honestly, that's for them to figure out. But yeah, as consumers and as people who spend time in the industry, we can see the difference, and that's what they choose to do. But I think they're still out there. I just think that it's changed in a way that's kind of weird to us. So.
Right. I agree. I also wanted to talk about oh my God, the question was up to my head. I'm having a senior moment.
Just old.
Oh my God, it was the same. It's like right there. Oh, this is so sad. This is what I wanted to say. Why did you specifically want to leave radio?
Very
Because I know
good
like
question.
because I know that you said like you were doing this, that, and the other, like college and radio and iHeart and this, that, and the other, and then now you're on podcasting, which is wonderful. But what is the, kind of the real story?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, within the past year or so, it's become a new reason every day. I learned a lot about myself, and it's like, oh, okay, this didn't work out because I don't know how to speak up for myself, and I don't know how to sell myself. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's that, you know what I mean? I wasn't able to walk into a meeting and be like, look at all this stuff I'm doing. That's just not my personality. I'm going to put it out. If you see it, you see it. I keep on pushing, and that's just who I am as a person. But I think overall it just came down to, everybody wants, I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people want to act like it hasn't changed, and everybody knows that it's changed. It's way, the breaks are way shorter. It's very, put together in a way that's easy to digest, which works for a lot of people. But I just found myself wanting to have longer conversations with people, and more, just being able to express however I wanted. I don't feel like I was ever stopped from expressing myself how I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure that I was, period, without even thinking about it.
Right.
So yeah, it just came down to just wanting to be more creative and wanting to have longer conversations, more conversations. And like I said, that's not to say that people don't do that on radio, but I just didn't feel that I was able to do that, either given the space or myself and how I, carry myself and stuff like that. So yeah, and yeah, it was just really, like I said, there's so many reasons going through my head, but most of it was just a difference. And I think college radio played into that too, because I was able to do college radio, and I was able to feel what it felt like to just make things and just do things. And it's like, I always wanted to get back to that. And if it's like, oh, okay, if podcasting is that, then I'm going to go fully in that direction. So,
right.
Yeah, I applaud that, because it's hard to just listen to yourself and say, you know what, I do not want to do this. I want to do this. And to take that leap of faith, a lot of people, they won't do it. And if they, they get real scared, they'll go, I'm just going to work a 9 to 5. I'm not going to live out my true passion. Not to say that anything's wrong with 9 to 5. I have one. And
right. We all have.
But I'm just saying, it's hard to just kind of make that decision to trust yourself and trust your instincts. So I'm very glad you did.
Not even that, like, not to put dubs on it, but it's like, I know there's people out there like me who got a whole ass degree in it, not to mention that's all people know you for. That's all you really know about yourself. Like, it's a very intense thing. So it's like, there's things that go with just leaving a job. There's things that go with just leaving an industry. But the more you plant yourself in something, the more you're like, oh man, like, how do I even leave this? Like, who am I without this sometimes? So it's like, all of that is such a big thing. And also, you mentioned 9 to 5s. I'm such a big fan of people who have 9 to 5s and create things. That's my favorite thing in the whole world. Like, I think that there's so much passion and time and energy that go into it. And I think that, it's just a very important story to tell, because there was a time when, nobody talked about it, and it's like, oh, don't worry about what I do. You know what I mean? But it's like, the people who create and have 9 to 5s are literally my favorite. And I'm just such a champion of that.
That's what's up.
Well, thank you. We need those claps.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we're all doing, for sure. Yeah, it's just crazy. So like, even with you working at iHeartRadio and Sirius, how was those experiences? Was it the same across the board, really, because it's all radio, or
No. Sirius, I mean, I was there in 2012, so it may have changed, but it doesn't seem like it's changed. Sirius is super into celebrities, and Oprah has a show, and Martha Stewart has a show, and all these people have shows. It's like, no offense to them, but like, do they even know how to do radio? Like, why would they even have a radio show? Like, it's very, very weird. But on the other side of that, I interned with the All Out show, which was on Shade 45, and it was a free for all. Like, it was some of the wildest stuff I had ever seen. Like, one day we were in there and the host, they still kind of have a playlist. They're able to play with it a little differently, but every day on our playlist was One Mic by Nas. Great song, but like, why is this in here every day? So he pulled the PD in and like really went at him on air, and I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So Sirius has a lot more freedom, but they are super interested in celebrities, from my opinion.
Okay. And iHeart, not so much. Because it's from a marketing standpoint, right? Is that what that is? It's like, because even when you mention Oprah, like, I'm sure Oprah's not necessarily like on the radio. It's probably like taking the recording and putting, you know what I mean? Because even with her podcast, it's the same thing, like Super Soul Sundays. It's not like she's redoing it or extension of it. It's the same thing that you would watch on television that you're listening to. So,
with iHeart, they're a little more focused on making it more local, because they do realize that a biggest part of their audience is listening locally. So they want to have people who are from the area, who, know what's going on, know what the weather outside looks like, all that stuff. But with technology, that all changes too. In the bigger markets, you're able to see local people, but the Breakfast Club is on how many different stations, and that's not local everywhere to where that is. So it's like, it really depends on the place and the station. And I've always applauded, especially iHeart San Francisco, for still keeping it super local when everybody else was doing syndication and finding other people. So it's like, I do very much applaud them on that, because it is so important to have people in your community on your radio station. So.
To know, and that's a big thing, period. And whatever it is or whatever you do, it's good to have people from the community, tapping in with real people of the community. Interesting. So when you worked for Sirius, was that back east or was it here?
It was in New York. So I lived in Brooklyn, and then the Sirius offices were in Manhattan. So that was a really good time.
That's plush, girl. That's so plush. I don't know if I've been able to read that.
It wasn't that plush. I had just graduated from college, so I was able to stay in the college dorms at Brooklyn College. So it was a very New York shoebox, but I was just so happy to be there, and it was just so cool. We won't talk about how I went broke and had to leave, and all that stuff. It wasn't
it's expensive to survive.
Very.
Yes.
To your path, I almost went into the radio broadcast journalism field, but I ended up going into the magazine journalism field. Part of that was them constantly telling us that things were going to become obsolete. So kind of like, stay on top of your game. Print was going to go away. Photojournalism was kind of going to go away because everybody has a smartphone, so they can take their own pictures. Is that something that you were ever concerned with? Did you foresee anything in like the radio field?
A little bit. I mean, it was always like, it's gonna die, and it's like, I don't know if it's gonna die, like, you know what I mean, like even newspapers are supposed to die, and we just found a new way to get newspapers and stuff like that. So I knew that it was never going to die, but I was always very cognizant of the fact that it was changing, especially with such a big technology like syndication, where they were able to take somebody from New York and play them, in the Bay Area or wherever, and be able to really just pump it out like that. I was always aware of that, and I was just always aware of like it changing within the music industry because of, you know, all these different streaming services and us being able to listen to what we want to listen to instead of what they want us to listen to or what they think we want to listen to, whatever you want to call it. So I was just very cognizant of the fact that like it was changing, but it wasn't dying, but the change was a big deal. You know what I mean? Like it was very intense to see like, oh, okay, this isn't what it used to be. So.
Yeah. Did it make you feel like you needed to have like multiple streams of income, like a side hustle or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I was always like, I think it was just part of me where it was like, I just constantly felt like I had to have multiple jobs. So that was just like the hustle in itself. And I, you know, I felt weird having downtime and stuff like that.
For sure.
So yeah, that played a big part. And just really seeing how different people did, you know what I mean? Like everybody I know had multiple jobs. I was like, oh, okay, gotta have multiple jobs, gotta do it. But I think in the back of your mind, it's like, oh, okay, let me make sure I'm good because this is kind of changing in a way. But I think it also makes you super defensive. Like when people are constantly telling you that your industry is about to die, you're like just really angry about it and very, very defensive. So that was an interesting part of it.
Yeah, that's real. I think it's important to kind of tell that story because it's so easy to kind of get caught up in the fact that like you got your degree, you spent all this money, I got to stay on this path. Anything could change at any time. Like coronavirus clearly just showed us that. So you kind of always have to continue to be marketable and kind of like sell yourself. So that's big. So I've tried to do that myself, but you know what I mean? We'll see. Do you have any advice or where do you see yourself going in the next, like, I don't know, like 5-10 years?
I mean, I guess I want to like preface it as saying like it's sad, but it's really not sad. Like I just see myself doing my regular 9-to-5 job, creating this podcast, and I do have a bunch of different ideas for it that I'm excited to get into, you know, within the next couple of years. I really want to do like themed episodes and just really, because a lot of the conversations I had, certain themes would pop up every once in a while, whether it's therapy or whether it's, you know, the order that they made the song. So I want to be able to put those together. So yeah, just honestly just living my little life and just creating stuff and you know, I've found kind of happiness in simplicity. And you know people talk about it a lot, you know, when we were younger, like, oh no, like just go live a simple easy life. It's like, no, I got to chase this big thing. And it's like, okay, like I chased this big thing, I enjoyed it so much, but now I know pretty much exactly what I want to do, and it's a little simpler, and that's okay because that's what makes sense to me and that's how I feel, and I'm still creating, I'm still making things, and I really do want to focus on like community building. Like I love what we've made at Pod Recognize Pod. I want to try to expand that once we're able to meet in groups again, because a lot of people have Zoom fatigue, and I'm like, oh, I tried to do this project on Zoom, and people are like, no, we don't need any more Zooms. so like really creating community and bringing people together, who, especially people who are working on their own and trying to make things, and showing that there's resources and there's different ways to do it. So I'm just really focused in on those things, because at the end of the day, that's what fuels me. That's what gets me excited to do things. And you know, I think that those experiences brought me to where I am today. So I'm super thankful for that.
I agree. I agree. Like, and we're so happy that we were able to attend, and we want to attend again. I know, like, we've just been all busy, and I'm definitely zoomed out. Man, I just want to reach out and touch somebody. I'm just Zoom. I don't want to do another Zoom for this. I don't want to do Zoom for work. Lord have mercy. But what I would like you to do in closing is tell us maybe, I don't know, top 5 like albums or artists to look for or that you're interested in right now.
Like recommendations?
Okay.
I already said Monty Draper, but I'm still gonna put him in the list.
Yeah.
He's working on a project right now with basically such incredible artists throughout the Bay Area. So everybody from Ian Kelly to Brookfield Deuce, there's like just a whole like collective of people, and they're calling themselves Grand National, but with instead of an A in National, it's an X, so it's like Grand Nation XL. So that's gonna be crazy. I know that's gonna be super dope. Other people to look out for, let's see, off the top of my head, Iman Europe is a singer from Los Angeles. She is incredible. She just really, her music is just so therapeutic, and she even taps into that, like she has an affirmation book and stuff like that, so her soul is just incredible and electric, and it really shows in her music. So that's 2. Let's see, it's weird too because I haven't been on social media lately just because it's a lot. So I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Let's see, so that's 2.
Or just some people that you like are really into, you know, like somebody that you listen to, even if they don't have new music dropping, but somebody that you like, this is a super dope artist.
Yeah, your playlist.
Yeah. So Coda the Friend, he's super dope. He's out of New York. He just released a project, super good. Like his storytelling is crazy. So I love him. Let's see, last 2 in my playlist, we're gonna go Earth Gang. I love Earth Gang. I love Earth Gang. They're just incredible, and I think they just released like a Spillage Village song, and so that's their group. That's super cool. Last one for the ladies, we're gonna go with, you always have to include the ladies, like people cheat themselves when they don't do that, man. We will go with Hannah Got Raps. She's a rapper from LA too. I'm like, I spent a lot of time in LA. But
LA.
I love LA.
Yes, no, there's so much good music coming out of the Bay Area, and they're like, just the connect is crazy. So yeah, Hannah Got Raps, she's super dope. Just making good, authentic music, and like really speaking for herself, and creating spaces for herself that I think is super important.
Nice. I love that. So what's next? I know you said you're not doing any Zooms, but when's your next movement? When's your next event?
We're keeping up with Pod Recognized Pods. So we've been trying to do them twice a month. This month we're doing them once. So yeah, just playing around with those, hopefully getting in person soon, but also, you know, keeping gauge of like how comfortable people are. I don't want to force people into it, you know, so it's kind of managing that. So yeah, Pod Recognized Pod twice a month. I do have a lot of podcasts in kind of like chilling on ice, so I need to edit those and put those out. And I do have I was going through kind of my archives this last week, and it's like, oh man, I have a lot of video content that I just haven't touched in a long time and nobody's seen. So I really need to like package that together, you know, sitting down with different artists. And I kind of created this whole segment that I never even really like put out. So now is time to kind of put it together and put it out. So yeah, I think I might lean a little more into video content. Of course, drop podcasts, eventually get to themed episodes, but still keep Pod Recognized Pod going. And then, like I said, once we're really able to meet in person, I really want to expand on community and create more spaces. So.
Lovely. And how can the people get in contact with you or see some of your work?
Yeah, everything is Special Says on Twitter, Special Says on Instagram, specialsays.com. If you type in Special Says on any of the podcast apps, it should pop up.
Great marketing.
Yeah. And I'm like, if you can't find it, just DM me. We can, you know, chat, hang out. I'll give you whatever link you need, you know, make it easy for people. So
that's what's up. Well, we sure do appreciate having you.
I have a quick question before
Oh,
we
you
go.
do?
I'm sorry. Yes, because I was thinking about what you were saying, that you spent time in LA and we're in the Bay. So I have a question, like, what do you think about this? And then we can head out. Why do you think, and/or is it even important that a lot of artists from the Bay Area, they don't get the recognition and/or blow up as, some of the artists like in LA or New York or middle of nowhere? I just feel like for some reason the Bay Area was just a little different, and it's always harder. Either people sample and take and don't credit our music and stuff like that, or people like want to escape from here and not return. What's your take on that?
It's a lot of things. I mean, it really comes down to, I think independence is a good thing and a bad thing. I think that independence is what is bred inside of us, and it's so important, but it can also stop people from making that next move. You know what I mean? And I can't give out advice. I don't, you know what I mean? Like maybe it stops them from going to a label, which I don't even know if I would personally recommend, but depending on what level you want to be at, there are certain steps that unfortunately you need to take. So I think that there's an independence thing. I think that, as far as venues, there's some really great venues in the Bay Area, and I don't think they're constantly leaning into who we have here, and I would love to see more of that. And I mean, honestly, I think more as independence is kind of amplified and people are able to really do things themselves. You know what I mean? You think about Too Short and E40 selling out the trunk, and then it's like things in the industry kind of change, but now you do have independent places where you can upload your music and still get on Apple and still get on Spotify and stuff like that. So everybody being able to take it into their own hands, I think that hopefully we'll start to see that changing a bit to where we're doing it ourselves, we're making it ourselves, but we're also known for it and able to kind of create the force that needs to be here. So I think that it's coming. I think slowly but surely we're going to get there. But yeah, it definitely has been a fight, and it's been ridiculous, and especially with stealing sounds and just the weird politics that go on with it are just ridiculous. But I have hope that the more people are able to be independent, they'll be able to navigate that stuff and really be where they're supposed to be. So
awesome. Yes, I just need to hear that from you.
It's definitely hard. It's definitely hard for Bay Area artists. I agree with that. But we appreciate you coming so much. I know I do sound like Andy, huh? We do, because I think that you really, really spoke to the simplicity of being content in what you're doing, being confident in your 9 to 5 and still creating, and not trying to follow the trends and the constant, social media trend is make it a business, take over the world, don't work for the man. And I just appreciate the fact that, because I think in most cases when people try to follow that, we lose some of the culture because we so focused on trying to chase a dollar. It's a little hard. So I appreciate this conversation because you are bringing back that creativity, that genuine spirit, that just complete simplicity that I like. So I appreciate you for coming. We all do. Andy kind of left us, but
no, seriously, I appreciate you guys. I'm so glad that that's what you got from that, because sometimes you feel like you ramble and you're like, where am I actually going? But the fact that you got all that from what I said, I super appreciate. I appreciate you guys. You guys are killing it. You're creating content. You're talking to important people. Like the episode with, I forget his name right now, but the man who created Stable Goods, that's still my favorite.
Rashad. Yes.
Rashad. Like, because his story is so important and needs to be told. So for you guys to have that conversation with him was just incredible, and just all the different people and the way you're able to create themes. And I just always enjoy this show, and I just appreciate you guys really keeping going. You know what I mean? Like you guys have kids, you have careers. Like it's not easy, and I need people to realize that it's not easy to create these things, but you guys go out of your way to make sure that you're still creating, you're still having conversations with people who need to be heard from. And I think that going out of your way to do that is such a big part of it. And I know you always apologize for not coming to Pod Recognize Pod, but it's okay because you guys are making stuff. Like, you do not need to apologize. You guys are constantly creating. You're doing these sessions with people still, no matter what's going on in the world. Like, sitting down and still committing to productivity and creating is really important. So I hope everybody does that.
Yeah.
Special. We appreciate you, girl. Thank you.
No problem. Seriously, thank you guys.
We got to be a community. Air hugs.
Indeed. Yeah, exactly.
There it is.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And of course, I'll be emailing you, texting you, whatever. We'll be keeping
for sure. We look forward to
something. Yeah.
Anything we can let us know.
Exactly. Yes. Don't be afraid to reach out. Like Angelisa said, we're a community, so we're here. And so, all right, everyone, until next time. Out of here.
Survive adulthood the legal way.
Yeah.
I just made that up.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, so much.
You're welcome.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.